Okay, so let's start building some models. We're going to move down this list pretty much through each one just to show you the basics, the basic options you have for each of these standard bits of geometry here. So ignore these two for now, they'll become more self-explanatory very soon. So we're going to click on box first, which is pretty much as simple as geometry there is. It is just, as it says, a box. If you left click on it once, then you kind of get this see-through representation here, and it's asking you where do you want to put it. And this doesn't need to be the final position, it's just get it on the work plane or on the tabletop just to get going. So just left click once and there it is. And you'll see it comes in as red. If you want it a different colour, you can click here and you can change whatever colour you want. It does kind of just pluck whatever colour it thinks you might want. It's not really important. If you're going to print it, it doesn't mean that's the colour it's going to print or anything. That would depend on your 3D printer. It is just a visual thing. So I tend to leave it as it is, to be honest, but it's entirely up to you. Now it is asking, do you want it to be a solid or a hole? Again, this is going to make sense soon. Let's just leave holes for the moment. And it's giving you these basic options here. So the first one is radius, and it's set to 0. For radius, it's basically talking about the corners. So you can see this has got sharp corners at the moment, and if you slide this radius, then you can see you get the curved edges and corners. And the more you bring it up, the more smooth that is. If you go all the way, it becomes a sphere. Okay, so if you just wanted slightly rounded corners and edges, like a die or something like that, you could select something there. But that's how that changes. The next one is steps. Okay, I'll put a curved edge on to demonstrate this. So steps is basically, if you zoom in and if we take that down, we can see. Now in 3D, one thing to remember, and this goes right through all the various 3D software, however complex, computers don't really do curves very well. Because all objects tend to be done with straight lines, when you see curves, what you're actually seeing is lots and lots of straight lines. Okay? And the more lines that make up that curve, the smoother it will be. So this curve there, that's made up of 2 lines, or 3 lines actually, to make it look like a curve. And the more you put this steps slider up, the more lines it brings in and the smoother it gets. But even at its highest setting, I don't know if you can see that, but it is still lots of straight lines. Okay, and that is the same for pretty much all 3D software. So that's one thing to remember. Now, why wouldn't you just choose the maximum setting? Well, the higher it is, the more lines you've got in your model, the more complex the model can be in terms of memory use and things like that. It's not really, with modern computers, it's not as important as it used to be. It used to be we would try and keep the size of these files down because your computer would hang up and you wouldn't be able to fit it on wherever you were saving it, that kind of thing. These days it's not as much of an issue, but it is something to be aware of. Just that all curves in 3D are made up in this way. Okay, so certain items will behave a certain way based on that, and if you know that's what it's doing, it does make things a lot more easier to understand. Okay, but for now I just want to show you what this slider means, and it is just doing that. It is just taking up those steps and smoothing out those curves. Okay, like I said, these days you may just want to, if you did want a rounded edge and have it really rounded, you might just bang it up, but it's entirely up to you. You might want it to actually look like that, So these are all tools to come up with the kind of model you're looking to create. A box, a simple box is, you can make a lot of things out of a simple box, but you do have to refine it, and one of the ways to refine it is to curve the edges or put these facets on them. So these are all tools to come up with your final design. Okay, so that's what steps does. Length, width and height, fairly self-explanatory. They're set to 20 units at the moment, so we can change that. Okay, maybe you know the size, so maybe you wanted it to be 80 by, okay, so you can, maybe you know the size, okay, so you can change that. Maybe you know the actual size. Most of the time you do. You'll be modelling something you know the size of, so you might have a drawing, or you might be actually measuring something and trying to copy it. It's easy if you do give things an actual size. So what you can do is you can actually click on this. So what you can do is you can actually click on that figure there, and you can just type it in. Maybe it's 30. Maybe the length is 30. Click on this one. The width is 50, and the height is 10. And you know that is the size. Let's take that as, let's make it back to sharp edges. Okay, so maybe you have the dimensions and you know that's what it is, so you bring it in and you change those dimensions there.